For 50 years, we thought we knew Ron Howard, the perfect child star, the all-American boy who never fell apart. Opie Taylor, Richie Cunningham, the kid who made it out clean. But in his latest interview, Ron Howard finally told the truth, the devastating choice he made in 1991 that still haunts him every single day. The family member he almost lost to addiction while he was winning Oscars, and the moment his body completely gave out on set. The missing months, the silence, the secret he kept from everyone. This is not the Ron Howard story you think you know. This is the truth he's been hiding for half a century. 1960, a freckled 6-year-old with bright red hair walked onto a soundstage in North Carolina. His name was Ronnie Howard, and within weeks, America fell in love. The Andy Griffith Show made him America's son. Little Opie Taylor, innocent, pure, the kid everyone wished they had. And Ron played that role perfectly. Too perfectly. But what the cameras didn't capture, what Andy Griffith himself later admitted he never saw, was the pressure crushing that little boy from the inside out. By age 8, Ron Howard was his family's primary breadwinner. His father, Rance Howard, was a working actor who struggled to find consistent roles. His mother, Jean, had given up her own career. The mortgage, the groceries, the bills, all of it rested on the shoulders of a child who should have been playing Little League, not supporting a family. Ron has said in recent interviews that he remembers lying awake at night, terrified. What if the show got canceled? What if he forgot his lines? What if he wasn't good enough and his family lost everything? Then came Happy Days in 1974. Ron was cast as Richie Cunningham, and once again, he became the wholesome center of American television. For 7 seasons, he smiled that clean-cut smile, delivered his lines with perfect timing, and played the role of the good kid everyone loved. But behind the scenes, Ron Howard was suffocating. He watched his castmates live recklessly. He watched Hollywood chew people up and spit them out. And he made a promise to himself. He would never let that happen to him. He would stay in control, always. But control comes at a cost, and in 1991, that cost became unbearable. Ron Howard had just finished directing his critically acclaimed film, Backdraft. He was on top of the world, respected, successful, a Hollywood golden boy who'd done the impossible, transitioned from child actor to A-list director without a single scandal, arrest, or public breakdown. But what no one knew was that Ron was drowning. In his recent interview, Ron finally opened up about 1991, about the choice he made that year that still haunts him. While he was promoting Backdraft, traveling the world, shaking hands, and accepting praise, his brother Clint was falling apart. Clint Howard, Ron's younger brother and fellow child actor, had always lived in Ron's shadow. While Ron became Opie and Richie, Clint played the quirky sidekick, the oddball character actor. And while Ron stayed squeaky clean, Clint spiraled into addiction. Ron knew. He knew his brother was using. He knew Clint was in pain, struggling with the same childhood trauma, the same pressure, the same Hollywood demons. But Ron made a choice. He kept working. He kept promoting his movie. He kept accepting awards. And he didn't go home. He didn't stop everything to help his brother, because stopping meant admitting he wasn't in control. And Ron Howard was always in control. Clint Howard nearly died that year, an overdose, a close call that Ron didn't even know about until weeks later, because he was too busy, too focused, too afraid to face the reality that his perfect life was built on ignoring the people he loved most. When Ron finally got the call, when he finally flew home and saw his brother, hollow-eyed, broken, barely alive, he realized what his obsession with perfection had cost him. He had almost lost the one person who understood what it was like to grow up the way they did. And it was his fault. Ron has said that moment broke him in a way nothing else ever had. Not the pressure of being a child star, not the transition to directing, not the fear of failure,
but the realization that he had chosen his career, his image, his reputation over his own brother's life. He spent months in therapy after that, months trying to rebuild his relationship with Clint. And to this day, Ron says that 1991 is the year he regrets most, the year he learned that being perfect isn't the same as being good. But that wasn't the only secret Ron was keeping. Because while he was dealing with the guilt of nearly losing his brother, his own body was betraying him. In the mid-1990s, Ron Howard was working at a relentless pace, film after film. Apollo 13, Ransom, EDTV. He was directing, producing, juggling multiple projects at once. He barely slept, he barely ate, and he told no one that he was in pain. Constant, debilitating pain. Ron had developed a stress-related condition that was wreaking havoc on his body. Migraine so severe he couldn't see. Stomach issues that left him doubled over between takes. Exhaustion so profound that he would sometimes black out. But he kept going. Because stopping meant weakness. And Ron Howard didn't do weakness. Then, on the set of A Beautiful Mind in 2000, his body finally gave out, completely. In the middle of filming one of the most important scenes of the movie, Ron collapsed. Not a dramatic Hollywood-style collapse, just a quiet, terrifying shutdown. One moment he was standing, calling directions, and next he was on the ground, unable to move, unable to speak, his body simply refusing to continue. The crew rushed him to the hospital. Russell Crowe, his lead actor, later said it was one of the most frightening moments he'd ever witnessed on set. Ron Howard, the man who never faltered, who never showed cracks, was lying on a gurney, barely conscious, while doctors tried to figure out what was wrong. It turned out Ron's body had been running on empty for years. The stress, the pressure, the refusal to ever stop, it had all caught up with him, and his body had said enough. Ron spent weeks recovering, weeks away from the set, away from the spotlight, forced to sit still for the first time in decades. And during those missing months, as the industry whispered about what had happened, Ron Howard had to confront the truth he'd been running from his entire life. He wasn't invincible. He wasn't immune to pain. And the image of perfection he'd built, the all-American boy who never stumbled, was a lie. In his latest interview, Ron talks about those months with a rawness he's never shown before. He talks about lying in bed, unable to work, unable to distract himself, and finally having to face everything he'd been avoiding. The guilt over his brother, the pressure he'd carried since childhood, the fear that if he ever stopped, if he ever showed weakness, the whole carefully constructed life he'd built would crumble. And for a while, it did crumble. Ron Howard, the golden boy, the success story, was broken. But here's the thing about Ron Howard. He didn't give up. After those months of forced rest, after the therapy, after the long conversations with his wife Cheryl, who had been begging him to slow down for years, Ron came back. But he came back different. A Beautiful Mind went on to win the Academy Award for Best Picture. Ron won Best Director. And when he stood on that stage, holding that Oscar, he wasn't thinking about perfection. He was thinking about survival. Ron has said that winning the Oscar felt different than anything else he'd ever achieved, because it wasn't about proving he could do it. It was about proving he could do it while also taking care of himself, while also being there for his brother, who was in the audience that night, sober and proud, while also being honest about his limits, his pain, his humanity. Today, Ron Howard is 70 years old. He's still directing, still creating, but he's also finally talking about the cost of being the good kid, about the weight of perfection, about the devastating choices he made when he thought control was more important than connection. He talks about his brother Clint, who's been sober for over 20 years now, and how their relationship has become one of the most important things in his life. He talks about the collapse on set and how it forced him to redefine what success actually means. Ron Howard's story isn't about a fall from grace. It's about something more complicated. It's about a man who did everything right, who followed every rule, who never made a scene or caused a scandal, and still almost lost everything. Because perfection isn't protection. Control isn't strength. And the all-American boy everyone loved was hiding a pain that nearly destroyed him. If this story moved you, if Ron Howard's honesty and vulnerability spoke to you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel for more untold stories about the people we thought we knew. And in the comments, tell us, do you think the pressure we put on child stars to be perfect sets them up for a lifetime of struggle? Let's talk about it. Thanks for watching, and remember, behind every perfect image is a human being just trying to survive.